Just as Congress was mobilizing to force the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, files that millions of Americans wanted to see, files that allegedly contained damaging information about powerful political figures, Attorney General Pam Bondi did something remarkable. She looked unprepared. She fumbled. She reached for talking points that didn't quite fit the moment, and in that moment of visible discomfort, she revealed something crucial about what's really happening inside Trump's Department of Justice. She revealed the strategy. When questioned about the Epstein file release requirements, Bondi kept repeating the same phrase over and over. "We will follow the law," she said. "We will provide maximum transparency," she insisted. The laughter that punctuated her responses wasn't coincidental. It was the sound of people who understood exactly what was happening. Because what Bondi was doing, what she was actually doing beneath those carefully chosen words, was laying the groundwork for massive redactions, selective releases, and strategic delays. And the question everyone should be asking is, why? Why would the Trump administration be so eager to comply with the law on one hand, while simultaneously investigating Democrats in connection to Epstein on the other hand? The answer takes us deep into how this administration operates when it feels threatened. It reveals something about how power protects itself, and it explains why Pam Bondi, who once served as the Attorney General of Florida, is now serving as the legal shield for a president who might have his own reasons to fear what those files contain. Before we dive in, please make sure you're subscribed to this channel. To understand what's happening, you first need to understand the sequence of events. In November 2025, Congress passed the Epstein Transparency Act by overwhelming margins. The House voted 427 to 1. The Senate unanimously consented. This wasn't some partisan squabble. This was democracy working exactly as it was supposed to work, with bipartisan support for transparency in a matter of genuine public interest. The bill was straightforward. Release all unclassified records related to Jeffrey Epstein within 30 days. No ambiguity. No room for interpretation. Release the files. President Trump, initially opposed to the bill, reversed course over the weekend. He announced on social media that he had signed it. But here's the critical detail that most news outlets glossed over: the timing of Trump's other announcement, the one that came just hours before the bill passed Congress. On Friday, November 14th, 2025, Trump ordered the Department of Justice to launch a new investigation. Not into Epstein himself, not into his victims, not into the crimes he committed. Instead, Trump ordered the DOJ to investigate whether prominent Democrats had ties to Epstein. Specifically, Trump named former President Bill Clinton. He named Reid Hoffman, a tech billionaire and Democratic donor. He named Larry Summers, the former Harvard president, and he named J.P. Morgan Chase. In a True Social post, Trump called the entire scandal another Russia scam and said all arrows point to the Democrats. This was the key move. This was the maneuver that explains everything that came next. What Pam Bondi did in the days following Trump's order was extraordinary, not because it was new, it wasn't, but because it was so transparent about its political nature. She didn't push back on the president's order. She didn't remind Trump about the long-standing independence of the Justice Department. She didn't cite the Watergate-era norms that are supposed to protect the DOJ from becoming a political weapon. Instead, she publicly thanked the president for directing her to open these investigations. She publicly assigned Jay Clayton, the interim U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, to lead the probe. She essentially converted the DOJ into a political attack dog within hours of a presidential order. Now, understand what this means in practical terms. When Pam Bondi stood in front of reporters and was asked about the 30-day deadline to release the Epstein files, she had options. She could have said, "We will release every unclassified document by the deadline. Full stop." Instead, she deployed a series of careful phrases. "We will follow the law," she said. "We will provide maximum transparency within the law." These aren't the same thing. The first would mean complete transparency. The second means transparency with conditions. And what are those conditions? The legislation itself included a carve-out for information related to ongoing investigations. Information that could compromise an active federal investigation doesn't have to be released. Now, before Trump ordered these investigations into Democrats, there were no active federal investigations into Epstein's connections with prominent Democratic figures. The DOJ itself had said so. In July 2025, The department had released a memo stating that its review found no evidence that could justify an investigation against uncharged third parties. In other words, the DOJ had already completed its review and determined there's nothing here. But on November 14th, Trump changed that calculation with a single Truth Social post. Here's what you need to understand about Pam Bondi. She's not a career prosecutor making independent judgments. She was one of Trump's defense attorneys during the Ukraine impeachment. She's been an ally of the Trump family for years, and now, as Attorney General, she's demonstrated that she takes direct orders from the president. When Trump directed her to investigate James Comey, she moved forward with an investigation. Comey has since been indicted. When Trump directed her to investigate New York Attorney General Letitia James, the investigation proceeded. James has been indicted as well. Both have pleaded not guilty, and both maintain that the charges are politically motivated. This is the pattern. Trump identifies a political opponent or a perceived threat. He makes a public order. Bondi executes. The administration then uses the ongoing investigation as cover for not doing things it doesn't want to do, and that's exactly what's happening with the Epstein files. When asked what had changed since July, when the DOJ said there was nothing to investigate, Bondi gave a vague, almost laughable response. "There is new information," she said, "additional information." But she didn't specify what that information was. She didn't provide details. She didn't point to specific leads or specific evidence. She just said there was information. Because the real information, the thing she couldn't say out loud, was that Trump had ordered her to find a reason to delay and obstruct the file release. The rest was her playing by the script. Think about the timeline here. The House Oversight Committee released documents from Epstein's estate. These documents included emails in which Epstein allegedly stated that Trump knew about the girls and had spent hours with one of Epstein's victims. Trump's name appeared in these files. That's when the administration's entire approach shifted. That's when Bondi went from saying the files were sitting on my desk and she was ready to release them to saying no further releases would occur. That's when the narrative changed from transparency to obstruction. And then when Congress forced the issue with an overwhelming bipartisan bill, Trump needed a way out. He needed a mechanism to comply with the law while simultaneously preventing the full truth from reaching the public. The mechanism he chose was simple and brilliant in its cynicism: launch investigations into his political opponents using the names that appeared in the files. When Pam Bondi kept repeating that phrase, "We will follow the law and provide maximum transparency," she was actually saying something very specific to people who understand how the government actually works. She was saying, "We will withhold information that relates to ongoing investigations. We will use the legal carve-outs to redact massive portions of these files. We will argue, if pressed, that releasing certain documents would compromise the integrity of investigations into Clinton, Hoffman, Summers, and J.P. Morgan Chase." And here's the crucial part. This is technically legal. The legislation itself permits the withholding of information relevant to ongoing federal investigations. So when Trump and Bondi argue that they're following the law, they're not technically lying. They're just exploiting a loophole that exists precisely for situations like this. They're using the law as a shield for what is, at its core, an obstruction of justice strategy. Representative Robert Garcia from California, a Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, immediately recognized what was happening. In a letter to Bondi dated Friday, November 21st, he wrote, "There is already a concern that President Trump will try, on questionable legal grounds, to take advantage of a provision that allows the DOJ to withhold details pertinent to active investigations." Garcia explicitly stated that any new federal investigations initiated by the DOJ do not influence the committee's subpoena and that Bondi is still obligated to provide the complete unredacted documents. But Garcia's letter reveals a deeper problem. The Obama administration, the Biden administration, and now the Trump administration have all played these games with transparency. They all use national security and ongoing investigations as reasons to hold back information. The difference is that Trump has stripped away the pretense. He's doing this out in the open. He's ordering investigations into political opponents with the explicit purpose of creating legal cover for obstruction. And when questioned about it, his attorney general just keeps smiling and talking about following the law and maximum transparency. And here's the question nobody's asking directly. Why would Trump be this desperate? Why would he order investigations into Clinton, Hoffman, and Summers Why would he risk looking like he's obstructing justice if he truly has nothing to hide? The answer is that he's afraid. He's afraid of what those files contain. In the emails released by the House Oversight Committee, Epstein allegedly wrote about Trump knowing about the girls. That's a phrase with specific meaning. That's not the language of casual acquaintances. That's the language of someone who had knowledge of illegal activity. Trump has denied authoring a birthday greeting to Epstein in which he allegedly mentioned they shared a wonderful secret and have certain things in common. But the House Oversight Committee has compared Trump's signature on that greeting to other documents he signed, and their analysis suggests the signature is authentic. Now imagine you're Trump. Imagine you see your name appearing in these documents. Imagine Epstein's emails suggest you had knowledge of his trafficking activities. Imagine a birthday greeting with your signature talking about sharing a wonderful secret is about to become public knowledge. What would you do? You would do exactly what Trump is doing. You would look for a way to control the narrative. You would find a mechanism to keep the most damaging information under wraps, and you would use the most transparent means possible to do it because transparency itself is a form of cover. You can say you're releasing information while simultaneously making sure the most important information never sees the light of day. This is why the phrase maximum transparency under the law is so insidious. It sounds good. It sounds like Trump is trying to be transparent. But what it actually means is that Trump is going to release documents while withholding the ones that matter most. He's going to follow the letter of the law while violating its spirit. And when critics point this out, Bondi will just smile and talk about following procedures and protecting victims and investigation integrity. What does this tell us about the Trump administration more broadly? It tells us that this administration is not interested in the rule of law. It's interested in the appearance of the rule of law. It's interested in finding loopholes and exploiting them. It's interested in using the machinery of justice, the FBI, the DOJ, the courts, as tools for political revenge and political protection. We've already seen this pattern play out. Trump ordered investigations into James Comey and Letitia James. Both have been indicted. Trump has sued the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch for publishing a story about the birthday greeting. Trump has denied involvement with Epstein, claiming he expelled him from Mar-a-Lago for being a creep, even though photographs and evidence suggest Trump and Epstein were close associates for years. What we're watching is not the administration of a president who is committed to transparency or the rule of law. We're watching a president who is willing to weaponize his entire government to protect himself and his interests. We're watching an attorney general who has abandoned the independence of the DOJ to serve a single individual. And we're watching a strategy that is unfortunately working. Because here's the thing about this approach. It's effective. By the time the Epstein files are released, and some version of them will be released, the investigation into Democrats will be underway. The narrative will have shifted. The media will be divided about what the files mean. Trump's lawyers will have had months to prepare for whatever information emerges. And the most damaging documents, the ones that might actually implicate Trump in serious crimes, will have been carefully redacted, delayed, or buried in footnotes and appendices. This is how modern corruption works. It's not crude. It's not obvious. It doesn't involve men in suits handing briefcases full of money to each other in parking lots. Instead, it's subtle. It's legal. It's executed by appointed officials who know how the system works and who know exactly how to exploit its flaws. It's done in press conferences with careful language and smiling faces. It's done in truth social posts that appear spontaneous but are carefully crafted to have maximum legal and political impact. Pam Bondi didn't get nervous and fumble her words by accident. She got nervous because she knows what she's doing. She knows that by launching these investigations into Democrats, she's creating a legal mechanism for obstruction. She knows that by repeating phrases about following the law, she's attempting to launder what is ultimately a political decision through the language of legal procedure. And she knows that when the files are finally released, months from now, stripped of their most damaging contents, there will be nothing the public can do about it because technically the administration followed the law. Pam Bondi is not merely a mediocre attorney general who mishandles press conferences. She is a political operative who has been handed the most powerful law enforcement position in the country, and she is using it to protect her boss from accountability. Trump has not just nominated an attorney general, he has nominated a criminal co-conspirator. And what we are watching unfold in real time is the use of the federal government's prosecutorial power to obstruct justice. Make no mistake, when you see Bondi sitting in front of cameras talking about maximum transparency and following the law, what you're actually seeing is the use of legal language to commit crimes. What you're seeing is an administration that has abandoned any pretense of serving the public interest and is instead dedicated entirely to protecting itself. What you're seeing is corruption perfected into an art form, corruption that looks good on television and sounds legitimate in press releases, but is, at its core, a wholesale betrayal of the rule of law and the principles this country is supposed to stand for. The question now is whether Congress, the courts, or the American people will have the will to hold this administration accountable. Because if they don't, what we're witnessing right now will become the new normal. We'll have set a precedent that a president can use the Department of Justice as a personal legal shield. We'll have established that an attorney general can take direct orders from the president. And we'll have created a system in which the most powerful people in the country can obstruct justice simply by following the letter of the law while violating its spirit. That's what's really at stake in this moment. That's why what Pam Bondi is doing matters so much, because if she gets away with it, if Trump gets away with using his administration to bury damaging information and investigate his political opponents, then we've fundamentally changed what the Department of Justice is. We've transformed it from an institution dedicated to justice into an institution dedicated to power. And once you've made that transformation, it's very hard to transform it back. So the next time you see Pam Bondi on camera smiling and talking about following the law and maximum transparency, remember this: that smile is the smile of someone who knows exactly how the system works and exactly how to exploit it. That language about transparency is cover for obstruction. And that entire administration is built on the premise that corruption is fine as long as it can be disguised in legal language.